Good morning. Good morning. I'm Tom Merrill, grateful member of this community, and for the last coming in the door, please take your seats. And now is the time to greet your neighbor. Good morning, Mary. Very good. Very good.
Check one.
And please take this time to turn off your cell phone or any other device that connects you theoretically to the outside world, because as we know, we're already always connected to the world, to the spirit, through spirit, and these devices do or can get in the way of the sound system, so please turn those off now. Thank you. Welcome to the Golden Gate Center for Spiritual Living. We honor you wherever you are on your spiritual path, and know that there is something here for you in word and in music to carry you through the day. And that there, with that, please join us in the morning chat that will be led by Bodhi and our musical guests, followed by spiritual mind treatment with Posi, Lyon. Thank you.
All right, let's all stand up. Deep down in my heart, I feel an everlasting call. Like the center of the sun, I radiate my love to all. And the more that I give, well, I wish to give some more. It's the way that I live, and it's what I'm living for. Deep down in my heart, I feel an everlasting call. Like the center of the sun, I radiate my love to all. And the more that I give, well, I wish to give some more. It's the way that I live, and it's what I'm living for. Deep down in my heart, I feel an everlasting call. Like the center of the sun, I radiate my love. I wish it's the way that I live, and what I'm living for. Deep down in my heart, I feel an everlasting call. Like the center of the sun, I radiate my love to all. And the more that I give, well, I wish to give some more. It's the way that I live, it's what I'm living for. And the more that I give, I want to give some more. It's the way that I live, and what I'm living for. And the more that I give, well, I wish to give some more. It's the way that I live, and it's what I'm living for. Yeah, amen, brothers and sisters.
Thank you for a great opening chant. Oh, good morning. I'm Posi, Lyon, and I am a licensed practitioner in the Golden Gate Center for Spiritual Living, which is where you are this morning in case you've forgotten. And our beloved senior minister is off leading a sacred journey in the British Isles, and we'll be back at the beginning of at the very end of the month, but not the last Sunday. So normally we would bless the children on their way to their classes. However, let's bless the inner child within, or are they?
They're back there already.
Oh, they're already in the back. Well, let's send them some love. Do you want to join the kids in the back? Okay. Welcome. We bless you too. So, and if you are here for the first time, we honor you, we bless you, we see who you are, and we hope that you will find something in these rooms that lift you up and expand your experience of life. And I do hope you'll come back to meet Reverend Carol in September. So if you would, please join me in the opening prayer now. If you wish, close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. Let it go. And know that which is breathing you and that which you are breathing is God. That one indivisible beingness, presence of unconditional love and immutable law, pouring itself through all of creation, expressing in new and diverse ways as me, as each one within the sound of my voice and beyond. There's only God, everywhere present. I am that which God is, as is each one here and beyond. Each of us is made up of that God stuff. Each of us is an unrepeatable miracle. And all of God is present in and available to each one of us as we say yes to it. So right here, right now, I claim and accept an opening in consciousness for each one within the sound of my voice to open their hearts, their ears, to the wisdom and truth that pours itself forth through our speaker, Reverend Mary Shelton, today. And I claim for her that she is lifted up to speak from that highest truth within her own being. I claim that lifting up for our musicians so that we are lifted up and transformed as a result of this service this morning. And I claim for each one that opening to allow the deepest yearning of our hearts and our souls, our deepest intent for each one to be revealed and expressed in our lives, as our lives, to allow that God presence within us to pour itself unimpeded through our lives. And I'm so grateful for all the ways God is showing up as the activity, as the light, as the love, as the joy, as the abundance, as the wholeness, as we call it forth and say yes to it. So I give thanks for the newness, for the transformation, for the revealing, for the deepest expression of God pouring itself forth as us. And I release this word to the activity of the law, which knows what to do, how to do it. And it is indeed bringing forth this word, pressed down, overflowing. I let it be. And so it is. Amen. And so now I invite you to open your ears and your heart even more to receive the blessing of the music this morning. We are blessed with Margaret Miles, with Bodhi. Now, Margaret is not only a singer and a songwriter and has that calling to deliver spirit through her music, and she also has CDs available after the service, but she also has had the calling since she was 8 years old to bring the magic of books, and she's the branch manager of the Fairfax Library. So please give a warm Golden Gate welcome to Margaret Miles and Bodhi Setko.
Everything is under control. I've got all my ducks in a line. Everything is under control, just not necessarily mine. Things are moving faster than the speed of light or Superman. Some things are moving faster than the human I can see. Everybody has a question. I know that I'm just a guest in this big universe, and what is curious to me is everything is under control. I've got all my ducks in a line. Everything is under control, just not necessarily mine. Snowflakes strike the windshield of my car as I drive through the dark. I'm pelted with a plethora of people's petty plans. Feeling any moment I'm about to jump to warp 10. Could you please repeat the question while I contemplate the night? Everything is under control. I've got all my ducks in a line. Everything is under control, just not necessarily mine. Like I can't do enough. I've got my thumbs in Chinese handcuffs, and the more I struggle, the more trapped I seem to feel. If I just relax and know the universe is here to ask, the problems will resolve themselves, and all that's truly real is everything is under control. I've got all my ducks in a line. Everything is under control, just not necessarily mine. Under control. I've got all my ducks in a line. Everything is under control, just not necessarily mine. Just not necessarily mine.
To mention her sense of humor, too. So those who have been here for a while know that the theme for the year is 2014, the year of yes, living what we believe. And the theme for this month is the law. And this is not the law of governance in our physical reality. It's the creative law of God. It's that aspect of God that creates everything seen and unseen, and Reverend Mary's going to talk about that more. And the word for today is discovery, so we get to discover how we can perhaps use the law more creatively in our own lives. And this gorgeous altar by our own Janet Ryan, right here, the mirror, if you notice, is very fluid. And it represents the liquid law. And there is a goddess peering into the mirror. And she represents that divinity within ourselves, perceiving our own magnificence, the truth of our being, and calling forth that which we choose to experience. And there's a lamp lighting the way. And so come up and look at this incredible altar for the teaching that it has for each one of us. So, and now it is my great pleasure to get to introduce our speaker for the morning, Reverend Mary Murray Shelton. She's been with us for a while, and she was our speaker last week. I have known her for quite a while, since I moved up to Katati in 90-something. And she was one of my first teachers of the Science of Mind philosophy, and also the senior minister at one of the largest churches in the area that she built from the ground up, which is now the Center for Spiritual Living in Santa Rosa. And this woman is not only a minister, she is a professional actress, a speaker, a published author, a facilitator of workshops, classes, speaker at conferences, does weddings, you name it. And I can attest to what a brilliant spiritual counselor she is from personal experience. So we're going to talk about her upcoming workshop shortly, but I'm putting in a plug right now. And you can sign up over on the education table for her email list if you'd like to receive her weekly blog. This month she is revealing the creative law, and her morning talk is Freedom is Bigger Than You Think. So please, please give a huge, warm Golden Gate welcome to Reverend Mary Murray Shelton.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning, and greetings from Reverend Carol, who is now finishing up her, or has just finished up her tour and is on to her vacation, and very soon will be able to visit with her daughter Melanie in New York. So that's coming up. A fellow who was in the mall happened to overhear a guy talking on a cell phone, and he heard the fellow say, "No, I don't think that's a good idea. And as long as you're living in my house, I think you should abide by my wishes." And then he went on to say, he said, the fellow eavesdropping said, "I was just about to congratulate him on his fatherly firmness," when he went on to say, "And besides that, Ma, you're 75 years old. I don't really think you need a tattoo." We are talking about, no, I'm going the wrong direction now. Where am I? Help. There we go. Yay! See, this is how the creative law works. You have to give it the correct directions. Otherwise, it does whatever you said, even if that wasn't what you meant. It cannot read your mind and correct for you. It can only operate on what you give it. And this is both a positive and negative aspect of creative law. So here we have a visual aid. You know, if I'm sending off the wrong directions, the universe can only follow the directions I give it. That's the creative law, which is what I'm talking about this morning. How convenient. Creative law operates a lot like your toaster. It is always plugged in to the power, but it's not self-aware. And it can't tell you, don't put jam in the toaster, that's not a good idea. It will toast whatever you put in there. So what we want to do is put in the proper bread, or whatever else we want to have come out toasted by the law. We want to put in the correct things. So we're going to talk about that this morning. We are in the midst of a series this year that Posi was referring to this morning. We have taken a writing by our founder, Ernest Holmes, and divided it up into 12 sections, and each month we're focusing on a particular section of that writing, which we call What We Believe. And you can see it over here on the poster board. So this is the 8th month, and we're in the month in which we're focusing on this particular phrase. We believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of our thought and acts upon it. Now, when we use the word thought, we're using that term kind of loosely, because we're not talking about just the linear things that you're thinking in English right now. We're talking about something larger than that, which is a belief system, or even deeper than that, what we truly, deeply feel and believe to be, quote, reality. That is what creative law is operating on all of the time. It does not have a choice. It must respond to what's in our consciousness. This is both a blessing and a curse. The creative law then operates upon that deeply held belief system, which we don't even realize is a belief system. We think it's just the truth. and responds according to it. Now, last week I suggested that you go off and count the number of green cars that you saw. How many of you did that? Great. You remembered past the moment you walked out the door, which is already impressive, right? Now, how many of you saw more green cars than you would have expected were out there? Okay, pretty much everybody who counted them. I counted 36 green cars in about 3 hours' time. I wouldn't have believed there were 36 green cars in Marin and Sonoma County altogether. And I was just driving right around home up in Santa Rosa area. So this is illustrative of this greater freedom we have than we think. And in fact, we have greater freedom than we can imagine that is available to us already. If we think about, from the perspective of the creative energy of spirit, that infinite mystery that some of us call God, but you can call it anything, that order, that creative energy throughout the universe, that conscious beingness that continues to manifest itself, we have some evidence that we might not be the only universe. So we might have multiverses going on simultaneously, just as complex as ours, each one with infinite possibilities. So that expands things considerably. And what limits what we perceive is what we already have set in place as our filters. We're designed to have filters because we can't possibly process all of the information that's available. So in order to function as human beings in a physical form with a physical brain that's only this big, is we have to have certain filters in place to allow us to function and to remain sane and to be effective. So I want to give you a few examples of things that don't seem likely, that have actually happened, that open up our perspective about what's possible a little bit just by becoming aware of these. On September 7th, 1871, the New York Herald reported that a man named Nathan Coker, who was an African-American blacksmith, an elderly man living in Easton, Maryland, could handle red-hot metal without being harmed. In the presence of a committee that included several doctors, he heated an iron shovel until it was incandescent, and then held it against the soles of his feet until it was cool. He also licked the edge of the red-hot shovel and poured melted lead shot into his mouth and allowed it to run over his teeth and gums until it solidified. After each of these feats, the doctors examined him and found no trace of injury. I couldn't do that, but he could do that. Tony Robbins tells a story about Stu Middleman, a runner who broke a world's record by running 1,000 miles in 11 days. He slept just 3 hours a night, and he covered 84 miles every day and ended in better condition than when he started. He had trained for years, but before he began this run, Middleman had spent some time with a group of indigenous South American Indians who, as part of a celebration, ran 75 miles a day for fun. Now that experience transformed Middleman's beliefs. He came to see that his goal of breaking the world's record was possible. In order for us to enter into new possibilities, we have to change our minds about what's possible. In 1977, I was years old. Yes, I was born. And I believed that I pretty much was who I was going to be. And whatever life I had, that was kind of it. That was what I had. And I got introduced to one of those personal growth trainings in the 1970s that everybody was doing. And I discovered a larger possibility for who I was. I discovered that the freedom that was available to me was bigger than I had thought. I began to discover that who I was bigger than I thought. was different than I thought. It changed my whole idea about who I was, who God was, what the universe was, and what was possible for me. And it happened in one weekend. I heard a story about a fellow whose friend said to him, "You've got to come to this workshop. It will completely change your life in just one weekend." And the guy said, "Well, I don't want to completely change my life this weekend. I got a lot of stuff I want to do on Monday." You know, we are resistant to, by nature, that which is unfamiliar. We want to stay within a certain level of comfort. We want to have a certain consistent sense of who we are. And even those who have broken through into an experience of enlightenment talk about how extremely disorienting it is for a while to try and get themselves a sense of who they are in this larger reality. And all of us have had some experience of that, and we know how when our life changes by our choice or not, it is very disruptive for a while in terms of finding our way around. So we have a system that limits our perspective, and it does it in ways that are very effective for us as a species to communicate with each other, to make sense of the world, to operate consistently within the world that we see. So, for example, we see in color, or what we perceive as color, we human beings are trichromats, which means that we see the colors that we see. Now, most mammals that are not primates are dichromats, which means that they see only on a yellow-blue spectrum. So, for example, imagine a tiger in a forest. To us, this brilliantly black and orange striped animal is a huge contrast to the green background, and we would see it. But most mammals don't see that. Because they see on a yellow-blue spectrum, what they see is a creature against a gold, brown, and black background. So the tiger blends into the environment from their perspective, but not from ours. We see differently. We're picking up different information. The other thing about trichromats that's interesting is that they all have exposed facial skin that changes colors depending on the balance of hemoglobin and various things in their bloodstream. So when we're sick, our skin looks greenish. When we're embarrassed, our skin, or we're excited about something, our skin can get reddish. If we're very cold or very frightened, we can get really pale. So we're communicating to other trichromats like us who can see those colors what our state is, which gives them some idea emotionally how to deal with us. So we see those colors and we communicate through them to each other. Are you with me so far? Now that doesn't mean that what we see is all the colors that there are, because we know that we don't see X-rays and we don't see infrared unless we have an instrument to measure it. So there are more colors than what we see. I don't know who sees them, but we don't. We also have a hearing filter. When I was a kid, my brother sent from where he was in the service in Germany a cuckoo clock to my mother. And this cuckoo clock that we had on our wall for years and years had a very loud tick, so that when you walked in, you could hear this thing tick tock, you know, on the wall. Now, I lived with that clock for years, and I watched TV in the evening, and the clock never bothered me. In fact, I realized when I was in high school that I couldn't hear it, and that I actually had to sit and look at it and think about it in order to hear it ticking and talking. I could come in from having been outside or been away the whole day and come into the house, and I still didn't hear it. We have a filtering system in the brain that filters out what has already been assessed and is no longer relevant. So our brain conserves energy and attention by analyzing stimuli for danger, but it also wants to prevent false alarms. So the hippocampus compares what's coming in to stimuli it already has stored, and if it's not important or it's not dangerous, not important, it doesn't necessarily allow it in. It's already noticed that, no big deal. The same thing with our visual stimulus. Our visual stimulus lets in what's valuable to us and filters out what's not in that same kind of way, so that we don't notice things that are very familiar to us. Our brain relies on stored information for them. It's almost like we don't see them, we're looking at the past, really, peripherally. Something changes a lot, that gets through to us and gets through to our attention. Our brain also, interestingly, between the time the light hits the retina in our eyes and the brain processes what we're seeing is about 1/10 of a second. Now that could be really dangerous if something is flying through the air that's about to hit you, because it could travel a long way in 1/10 of a second. So to compensate for the lag time, what the brain does is it projects to us where something should be in that 1/10 of a second. And to us it appears continuous, and usually the brain is right about that. So we're generally seeing what our brain is making up. It matches with what's happening in real time. So the universe, our perception, our five senses, is shaping the universe that we allow ourselves to see. And we also are meaning makers. We're designed to make meaning out of or to interpret what we see, which means that sometimes we jump to conclusions. We have gathered evidence and we draw a conclusion which may or may not be accurate. So when doctors do experiments with split brain patients, in other words, for some reason the two hemispheres have been divided, either there's been a disease process or for some reason the hemispheres need to be divided so they're not talking to each other. So we know that the left side of the brain is generally the side that does verbal and analytical type of functions, and the right side is more creative and artistic and nonverbal. So when they experiment with split brain patients where they show one image to the left hemisphere of the brain and one to the right hemisphere of the brain. So we know that the left hemisphere is oriented toward the right side of the body and vice versa. Okay, so here's what they did. They showed a picture of a chicken claw to the left hemisphere of this person's brain. So actually that would be the right eye, right? And they showed a picture of a snow scene to the left eye or the right hemisphere of the brain. And then they asked the person to describe what they saw. Well, actually, what they asked the person to do was they showed them some pictures of objects and they said, choose with each hand the proper object for what you see, right? And so the person, let's see now, I gotta make sure I do this right. The correct choices were a chicken for the chicken claw and a shovel for the snow scene. And the patient did choose the shovel with his left hand because he saw the snow scene with his right eye, and the chicken with his right hand because he saw the chicken claw with his left eye. So he had the right things in his hand. And then the experimenter asked him why he chose those objects. So we're now talking to the left brain, right? Which is the right hand, the right eye. So the left hemisphere of the brain, the patient said, oh, that's simple. The chicken claw goes with the chicken, and you need the shovel to clean out the chicken shed. The left hemisphere made up a reason for why the left hand had chosen that shovel, because it could not process and wasn't communicating with the side of the brain that saw what that was about. Does that make sense? So we automatically make meaning out of what we see. It may or may not be accurate. So with the creative law, what happens is that, yes, we have this limited perspective, and the limited perspective is available to help us actually function in the world. It helps us to filter down and let in what's actually important to us. So, for example, I used to say, if you buy a new car, you may never have noticed that car particularly on the road, but once you buy it, you're going to start seeing them everywhere. So I told this story on a Sunday morning years ago in Santa Rosa, and a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, Reverend Mary, that doesn't work for me. She said, we used to have a Mercedes, and we bought a new Toyota, and I still see Mercedes. And I said, Marie, that's because you think you made a mistake and you wish you had a Mercedes. And she went, oh yeah. So it was still important to her, more important than the new car. She was still looking around and noticing what she was yearning for. Are you with me here? Does this make sense? Her brain was allowing it in. When you decided at random that green cars were important to find, you found them. It was a change in your filtering system, but I would bet that once you stop counting them, they disappear. Unless you have some reason to think that they're important to you. That's going to extinguish itself. So we have this limited perspective, and the advantage of it is that it's changeable, it's adaptable, and how it changes or if it changes is up to us. So our perspective sets the tone for how we experience life to be. And our perspective is actually malleable, it's changeable. Sometimes we change it because we get more information. How many of you assumed when I started to tell the story at the beginning of the service that the guy on the phone was talking to his kid? Certainly not his mother. But once you got more information, you could imagine that scenario of the 75-year-old mother who wanted the tattoo. But it's not the conclusion that you jumped to overhearing the conversation any more than the eavesdropping man had leapt to that conclusion, that that's what was going on. So when we say in Science of Mind churches, in Centers for Spiritual Living, change your thinking, change your life, this is what we're talking about. But we don't just mean on the surface. You know, we teach people in our classes, how do you learn to change your thinking? How do you learn to use the law, the creative law that's given to us, that operates through us even physically? How do we learn to use it intentionally to move us in the direction that we want to go? And so we learn how to do affirmations, and we learn how not to do affirmations, because there's a lot of things we can do to mess ourselves up with them. But we learn these spiritual tools, and we begin to monitor and pay attention to our own thought processes. We learn to pay attention to what we're paying attention to. And in this process, we begin to get uncomfortable because we see the potential to shift, and we begin to discover that who we are is not who we thought we were. We begin to see the patterns of how we've created stuff we didn't like in our lives, and it can be distressing. We begin to see the patterns of how we're creating things right now, even though we find that we have done it again too late. You know, you look at yourself and go, oh yeah, that's it, I did it again. I'll talk about that more next week. So in this process of discovery, there is some discomfort between where we discover we could go and where we've been, and who we're discovering that we are. Actually, this whole system has been a gift to us that is so beautifully and wonderfully empowering when we choose to use it intentionally and when we discover that we can. When we forgive ourselves and let ourselves off the hook for all the mistakes we made because we didn't know what we were doing. Ernest Holmes, our founder, says, in our ignorance of the truth, we have misused the highest power we possess. And so great is this power, so complete is our freedom in it, so absolute the domain of law through it, that the misuse of this power has brought upon us the very conditions from which we suffer. We are bound because we are first free. The power which appears to bind us is the only power which can free us. And the only person who has control over that is us. Nobody else can make us believe something or behave a certain way. This was the greatest freedom I received from that personal growth training. I remember the trainers standing up front saying, no one can make you feel some way. No situation can make you feel some way. It may be your habit, but it's a choice. That was the most enormous revelation to me. The idea that I didn't have to feel guilty if somebody thought I should. That I didn't have to be down on myself because of somebody else's opinion, or even because of my own past opinions about that. Does this make sense? It was so huge, this idea, that it wasn't a rule of how I had to behave. It was a learned choice that I could change. That was immense. It changed my world. It changed my world. So Ernest Holmes goes on to say, our belief sets the limit to a demonstration of a principle which of itself is without limit. It is ready to fulfill everything because it's infinite. It's infinite. And so we have this amazing thing going on in us that is naturally limited. It's naturally limited so that we can operate on what's important to us. It's also naturally limited by focused attention, and repetition. So normally our focused attention and repetition is on stuff we need to fix, or stuff we're irritated by. How many times have you complained about someone in the same way, about the same person, to people who've already heard it, and who, frankly, are done with it, you know? And so we repeat things like that, and it gets us into trouble. When Jesus said to us, "It is done unto you as you believe," or to someone who he was in the process of healing an experience of theirs, he said, "Let it be done unto you as you have believed." In other words, it's a restatement of the law. When St. Paul says, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind," he's talking about the same thing, changing the limited perspective. It will still be limited, but what we're looking at will change as we change the focus. So we have this amazing thing in our brain. It's called a reticular activating system, and it sits at the base of the brain. This is the filter, and it just takes directions, and it allows us to do a shortcut. So when we go back to something that we've done before, it gets easier to do. How many of you learned to ride a bike? Okay, when you learn to ride a bike, the first few times, it could be difficult. It could be awkward. You might fall off. You might have training wheels. Somebody might hold the seat for you and run along behind. But once you start to find your balance, you begin to build something in your brain. The brain literally responds to the repeated action. It creates a new network in the brain as a result of that repeated action. So when we repeat something and we focus on it, the brain cooperates. And the filtering system then lets that in faster because it's important. And it becomes easier and easier to do. So the combination of focused attention and repetition is magic. And it's such a gift that it's how the creative law, even physically in us, operates. We set the filters, and through our focused attention and repetition, those filters get finer and finer. When my son was a little tiny baby, we lived in a neighborhood where the houses are pretty close together, and one night, in the middle of the night, the neighbor set his house on fire, not intentionally. And we had aid units and fire engines and ambulances and everybody with sirens and lights going in the middle of the night, and I slept through the whole thing. And my husband at the time was awakened by all this noise, you know, and saw what was happening. After it was all over and they all left and everybody went home, about a half an hour later, my little son, my baby, woke up and said, "Mama," and I was awake like that and up and out to go see what he needed. And when I came back, my husband said, "I can't believe that. You slept through this whole thing." He says, "Mama, and you're awake." I said, "Well, apparently the neighbor's house wasn't important to me, but the baby was important to me," and that's what my filtering system let in. I heard it through that deep sleep right now. Can you relate to this? So that filtering system works for us, and I wasn't doing it intentionally, you see? So this sounds ideal. It sounds ideal. Ernest Holmes says, life becomes to us the particular thing we need when we believe it becomes to us that particular thing. So here's another piece of changing the filtering system. We believe, once again, that's code. We believe. What do we believe? How do we know we believe something? We believe it because we act in accordance with it, we think in accordance with it, we speak in accordance with it. When we want to change a belief, we change the way we're speaking, we change the way we're behaving, we change the way we're thinking. All of those things have to come into play. You can say all the affirmations you want, but if you don't change the way you're thinking and behaving to match that, It's not going to change your consciousness. We have to work on all fronts to really change the consciousness, to change the filter, to let the filter know something is important. We don't just say it over and over again. We put our whole attention on it, meaningfully, and accept it. So it sounds ideal, but the challenge is, what if the filter is causing us incorrect assumptions? What if it is gathering inaccurate evidence? What if it is reinforcing negative behavior? Do you know, if you have a prejudice about somebody or something, you likely, what you'll do is you assume this is true about this group of people, let's say, and then there will be exceptions. So the people that you see that don't match the assumption, they will be exceptions. Rather than challenge the assumption that maybe it's incorrect, they just become exceptions. Does that make sense? So that way we can still hold the assumption or the prejudice in place and have a few outliers. But what we want to be able to do is be open to the question, what if that assumption is inaccurate? And my brain and creative law are supporting my inaccurate assumption. The toaster is toasting the jam, because that's what I put in there. So when we want to intentionally use creative law, here's one of the key things to be aware of. Do not get discouraged because of resistance. When we begin to do affirmations, when we begin to ask practitioners for prayer, when we try and act in accord with a new belief and it feels weird, we are developing a new habit. The brain supports that, but we will feel resistance initially if it's working. So the resistance is a blessing. It's a clue. It's the first clue that it's working. Something is changing. That's why we feel discomfort or resistance. That's good news. The universe has no resistance. It can't. It always has to say yes. So the resistance we feel within ourselves is, or we can take it as an encouragement to keep going, that's actually a good sign. That pushback is actually a good sign. In Hebrews it says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, as it was the substance of things which have come to pass. And it is the evidence of things not seen. Okay, now let me go back to that for just a second, because this is exciting stuff. Faith, that's our belief or our assumption about what's true, what's real. Faith is the substance. The faith is the raw material out of which you're making something. It is the vibration. It is the presence of spirit that creative law is going to act upon. It is the raw material, the faith. It's the substance of what has not yet been created. And your own faith is the evidence of that which is being created, just as it was the substance of things which do appear. We are the manifestation of God's faith, you might say, although we think of faith as in something we don't know or don't understand, whereas spirit just knows. That's its faith. So maybe that we're developing that knowing. That is our evidence of what is not yet seen. So as we're developing a new habit, and we keep persisting in it, and we keep looking for the next revelation of it, that is our evidence of what we are becoming, of discovering more of who we truly are. It is the evidence of everything we've ever manifested in our lives before, good and bad. And that is the evidence that we are powerful, that we have manifested a life already. Now we want to point that power, at least some of the time, in an intentional, chosen direction. So we're making a choice to change our point of view. We're making a choice to change our assumptions and intentionally use the creative law to create more God showing up in our lives as what? As health, as happiness, as more abundance, as our home, as our relationships, whatever it might be. So you may know this story. This is an old story about identical twins whose personalities were so different, their parents thought there must be some way to help, get these kids more on an even keel, more balanced, because one of them was such an eternal optimist, and the other one was such a deeply dyed-in-the-wool pessimist. The parents thought, we got to do something about this to kind of, bring them both to the middle. So they took their boys to a psychologist, and they said, what can you do here? And the psychologist said, well, I'm going to do an experiment with the boys to see if we can't, even them out a little bit. So he separated the boys, and he prepared 2 rooms. And in one room, he placed all of the latest gadgets and toys. And he put the pessimist twin in that room. And then he took another room, and he put horse manure in it. And he put the optimist child in that room. And then he went back to check on the room with the toys with the pessimist. And the little boy was sitting on the floor crying. And the doctor said to him, why are you crying? He said, I'm probably not going to be allowed to keep all this stuff anyway. And even if I can, my friends and my brother are going to get jealous. And then I'm going to need batteries, and I'll have to read the instructions for all these things. And eventually, they're all going to break. Psychologist left the room. He went over to the room that was full of horse manure. And he went in, and the little optimist was dancing around this pile of horse dung. And he said, and why are you so happy? And the little boy said, well, with all this dung in here, I know there's a pony around here somewhere. The psychologist came back to the parents, and he said, you're right. You have a child that is an optimist and a child that's a pessimist. He said, their circumstances do not determine their experience of the world. Their point of view determines their experience of the world. We have a point of view. We've been given a gift not only to have a point of view that is creative, to bring to us in alignment with it, but we have been given the power to change it. It is the key to creating the life that we desire. That key is yours. Use it. Namaste. Now is our time of offering. And no, it's not. Now, and there's a takeaway for today I want to tell you. Here's the takeaway for today. This is what I want you to remember today. Life offers me endless possibilities to discover who I truly am and to express it fully with joy. Life offers me endless possibilities to discover who I truly am and to express it fully with joy. Now let's take this inward. Yes, we are immersed in a field right now that is infinite, that wants to serve us. We are in the presence of divine love, which knows us intimately well. We are in the presence of a creative law which is unlimitedly abundant and ready to serve and already actively operating in us and through us. And so in this moment, I choose to be transformed. In this moment, I choose to open my perspective to something new that sets me free in the world. I choose to assume that great good is on its way to me, and I am a field of welcome for it. I choose to allow my perception to open and allow in more blessings in my life. I choose to be grateful for them in advance, to expect to see them, to count them and number them as they come, and to discover through this the freedom, more than I could ever use or want or imagine, that is mine, to discover more of who I truly am. Deeply blessed in this, I celebrate it with such joy, and so it is. And so it is. Yes, 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 yes. There we go. That's it. Now I think it's the offering time. Is that true? Now is time for special music. And you know, this music is so delightful that we're just going to soak it up. So let's enjoy our wonderful music once again.
This song has a wonderful chorus. You can sing along. Standing alone by the side of a stream, spirit to form, asking myself, do I dare what I dream? The river flows endlessly on. Oh, the river flows on. It will be running long after we're gone. We are the river and we are the song. The river flows endlessly on. Spinning through space on this planet of ours. Spirit to form, spirit to form. We are all made of the same stuff as stars. The river flows endlessly on. Oh, the river flows on. It will be running long after we're gone. We are the river and we are the song. The river flows endlessly on. Oh, I rise in the darkness and everything's gone. Spirit to form, spirit to form. I know in my heart I am never alone. The river flows endlessly on. Oh, the river flows on. It will be running long after we're gone. We are the river and we are the song. The river flows endlessly on. Spirit to form, Spirit to form. I let it go, I let it be. The river flows endlessly on. The river flows on. It will be running long after we're gone. We are the river and we are the song. The river flows endlessly on. The river flows endlessly on.
Oh, thank you, Margaret, for that beautiful song. And Reverend Mary, will you stand up? And would you all stand up and put your hands out to her? And repeat after me. Reverend Mary,
Reverend Mary,
we see you. We honor you. We bless you for revealing the Word of God and the truth of God
bless you for revealing the Word of God and the truth of God
through you,
through you.
as you. We see your magnificence. We appreciate your brilliance.
Appreciate your brilliance
And we send you lots of love.
and lots of love.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Offering.
Offering. Okay, now it actually is the offering. I know you don't believe me after all that, but it actually is the offering. So
Peter and
this-
the wolf.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So now, as you take your gifts, I'm going to invite the ushers to come forward. As you take your gifts to give them this morning, let's remember that if the divine presence is all there is, then what you are holding in your hands to give is divine presence showing up as that, having been gifted to flow through you out into the world, wherever you send it. And so send it out with a conscious blessing. As we do this offering blessing, send it out with a conscious blessing to bless this center, Golden Gate Center for Spiritual Living, abundantly, and to bless you abundantly as well. So say this with me. This gift I give is God in action. I now send it forth to bless and to prosper. I know that everywhere it goes, it is creating a world living in love, one heart and one thought at a time. And so it is, and beginning right there with you. And so it is.
Love is my decision. It's up to me to give up my heart. Love is my decision. No one else. Once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. Love is my decision. Yes, it is. It's up to me to give up my heart. Love is my decision. Tell me to start. And once I decide to change my mind, God will decision right here and now. You guys sound awesome this morning, I gotta tell you.
All right. So on behalf of Golden Gate Center for Spiritual Living, we do collectively receive and accept these tithes and offerings with great gratitude. We know that we are blessed by these tithes and offerings, that they are not only given to Golden Gate Center for Spiritual Living, they're given directly to us. They flow out into the universe to produce great good, and they flow into us in abundance to bless us, to transform us, to lift us up, to know the truth in our world. And we're deeply grateful for all of this. And so it is.
So now it's time to find out what's happening in our community, and there's so much. Fall classes, woo! Woo! If you want to take and deepen what we do here every Sunday morning, classes are the place for it. If you're new, the first class to take is the Foundations class, and Reverend Carol will be teaching that this fall. And she will also be teaching Prosperity Plus 2, which will be open to everyone. If you've already had the Foundations class, then you can take Janet Ryan's Visioning class, which is a fabulous class. And Gail, where are you? Gail Durkin is over here. We'll be teaching Quick Start, which is a 3-hour introductory class to what it is that we talk about here every Sunday morning. So do not miss it. This is a teaching denomination, and the classes are where you can really deepen your connections with each other, with this community, and with that being able to use that law that she talked about so expressively in a very conscious and empowering way. If you want more of Reverend Mary, sign up over here, and also all the information about classes are over at the education table. She will be gifting us with a wonderful workshop on August 24th called Crossing the Threshold, How to Navigate a Major Life Passage. So, Reverend Mary.
So this flyer gives you a little bit of information. Next Sunday from 1 to 4 at the Learning Center, I'm going to be facilitating this workshop on crossing the threshold. If you're in the midst of a major life challenge or you see one coming, we're going to look at how we can navigate our own inner landscape, what the divine guidance is giving to us through a variety of different ways to discover what our map is for that particular experience that we're having. So if that sounds interesting to you, do sign up for the workshop, and I will be happy to share that with you.
She's a magnificent teacher. Also, Reverend Carol's series of talks for September are on the power of healing. There's a flyer over here. And I don't think people got cards today, but there will be cards at other services where you can write down any questions you have about healing, and she'll be answering those questions throughout the month of September. Jet Walker is not here today, but on the 5th, when there's a 5th Sunday in the month, we have a brunch. And so in the coming weeks, you can ask her about that. So it will be August 31st. The Virgo party, woo! Yay, Virgos, will be September 5th. So come celebrate us at Sue Ruta's home on September 5th and bring some food to share. Reverend Carol's ritual class for September will be Saturday, September 6th, and it's a ritual that you can take to other groups in your life. It will be about harvest. Please sign up today. There's a minimum to make sure that class goes. And we have our volunteer fair coming up. Service is one of the main ways that we can be in community here. And so you'll have an opportunity, and we will, to refill several volunteer positions. Most of these volunteer positions are only once a month, and you'll have an opportunity to choose where it would be fun for you to serve every Sunday. And it's also a way to, again, make new friends and build on that sense of community here. We have practitioners, would you come forward, who are in service this morning. They give their time, and if there's anything heavy on your heart or light on your heart that you'd like prayer for, these beloveds are here to serve you. And with the rest of the practitioners, please surround the room with your love and support. And please receive this blessing this morning. May you discover and uncover the magnificence of the being that you are. May you allow and open to the freedom to use the creative law in ever more empowering and delightful ways. And may Spirit guide your way. Please join me in the closing affirmation, which is behind me, and then followed by the closing song. Please stand. Thank you. Everything I need to discover my true self and open to new, freeing perspectives is available to me right here and right now. I am willing, I am receptive, I am creating new good in my life today.